Welcome to CRE Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
All right, welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. My name is J. Darren Gross. We're building a resource for investors and professionals dealing in commercial real estate by interviewing influential commercial real estate experts across the country. We're asking them questions and getting the answers. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you like what we're delivering, we sure hope you'll let us know by liking, commenting, and sharing our interviews in your network. Today we're going to take a look at the Southern California industrial and warehouse market. We'll look at market conditions and some economic and political influences and their effect on this market. I'm delighted to have today's guest, who is a repeat top commercial broker of industrial and warehouse real estate in the North Orange and West Riverside counties in Southern California. His specialties include user, owner, and investment representation. He's a shareholder with Lee and Associates Incorporated. My guest today is Alan Buchanan. Alan, welcome to the show.
Darren, I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me as your guest today. I'm excited to talk about some of the topics that we're facing down here south of you.
I'm excited to get into it as well. Hey, before we get started, though, if you could do me a favor and expand a little on my introduction there, tell a little bit more about your background and how long you've been down there and working in commercial real estate in Southern California.
Be happy to. So I have been in Southern California since 1982, been practicing commercial real estate since 1984. The entirety of my career has been with one company, and that is Lee and Associates Commercial Real Estate. And I specialize in what I call providing location advice to owners and occupants of manufacturing and distribution warehouse buildings in Southern California. I have a wide variety of clients. Generally speaking, they are closely held companies, either on the ownership side or the occupant side, because I've found that I really enjoy dealing with folks that own their own real estate, own their own companies, and I have found that I can add the most value with a client that would have that particular category. I have been married to the same beautiful young lady since 1979. We have 3 magnificent children, 2 of whom are married, and we just found out about a month ago that we are going to be grandparents for the first time. So that is a big life event that's going to happen to the Buchanan Harper clan here in 2015.
Wow, congratulations. A new chapter, huh?
Indeed, a new chapter, a baby bear, and we don't know if baby bear is a boy or a girl yet. I'm convinced it's a girl. Everyone else is convinced it's a boy, and obviously we are going to love whatever God gives us. So we're just counting the days.
Well, that's exciting. You got a 50-50 chance either way, I guess, huh? Being right.
Yeah, and that's why I stopped playing blackjack, because of those odds.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of your background there, and clearly it sounds like you've been in the market for quite some time and have a pretty good feel for what's going on down there. And speaking of that, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of a sense of what is the current marketplace like down there in your area for the industrial and the warehouse market.
Sure. So I'm going to center most of my conversation around specifically Orange County, California. And Orange County, California has a population of around 3 million people, and it spans from the eastern side of Los Angeles County all the way down to the San Diego County border, which is about 30 miles south of here. So you imagine this gigantic coastal county. And our industrial inventory currently is at a 35-year low in terms of vacancy. 96 of every 100 buildings of an industrial category are currently occupied. and it's just created this huge imbalance of owner versus occupant type dynamic to the point where we are truly entrenched in an owner's market. Owners are becoming a lot stingier with concessions, free rent. They're not digressing from their asking lease rates terribly much. We're not seeing anything in terms of moving allowances or heavy-duty tenant improvement allowances if an occupant comes along. And they really have their pick. They have anywhere between 2 and 3 candidates when a building becomes available just because there's such an imbalance.
Wow. Well, and can you give us a little bit of insight as how that compares with, say, 5 years ago?
Sure. So our world fell off the cliff in 2008, as it did in a lot of coastal communities. We are slowly rebounding, and I say slowly, within the past 2 years since 2013. Our sales prices for industrial properties have increased approximately 50%. And so we have now eclipsed 2007 levels that were just astronomical at the time. Lease rates have not moved quite as much. We've seen a hop of about 15% in lease rates for the past 2 years. But I just did this calculation at the peak of 2008. This time, which would have been 7 years ago, January of 2008, our vacancy industrially was about 5.5% to 6%, depending on which part of the county you were talking about. So we are almost half of that now in terms of available inventory.
Wow. Sounds pretty tight. Is that
tight.
Driving any? Are you seeing any new construction as a result of this?
We are, and what is occurring is we don't have a lot of vacant land in Orange County, California, from which to build greenfield industrial. And frankly, even if a parcel is vacant, it's generally too doggone expensive to build a warehouse or manufacturing building. It's much more lucrative, if you will, to build apartments, to build houses, to build office space, and a higher and better use than an industrial building. So what we're seeing a great amount of is repurposing of existing industrial campuses. A classic example of that is the old Boeing campus, which is in northeast Anaheim. Anaheim, your listeners probably recognize, is also the home of the world champion California Angels, as well as Disneyland. So there's
the Mighty Ducks down there. The Anaheim,
Ducks.
Is it the Ducks?
Yeah, we dropped off the Mighty, and we're now just the Ducks. So,
okay.
Yeah, but we still quack, and I think you all have some ducks up where you live too that are probably just as famous. But
that's right.
The Boeing campus was 108 acres, and it was the quintessential campus of aerospace manufacturing buildings that became very obsolete when the Cold War ended. And so Panattoni Development purchased 108 acres about 7 years ago, right at the wrong time, candidly, in terms of land prices, but they have really hit a bonanza because they've constructed state-of-the-art industrial buildings. The sales prices that they're achieving on an owner-user basis are just off the charts high, and they also have some high-cube distribution warehouse buildings, and they're starting to get some of those leased at just astronomically high lease rates as well. So they've been the most notable. There's another developer in town that's Western Realco that's done 3 or 4 developments around, and their developments have been highly successful as well. So that's about it in terms of new construction, which is unfortunate because, frankly, we could absorb twice as much, 3 times as much as what's being planned and what's being built.
Wow. Well, it sounds like the first part of the equation, you've got lots of demand. That's always the part you want to have. It sure beats the reverse. No demand. So let me ask you, part of what's driving the demand, is there any particular industry? Are you seeing this as a result of fuel costs change, people bringing their manufacturing onshore, just good times? What are you able to contribute it to anything?
Yeah, it I guess would sort of be all of the above. The sales activity has been driven in large part because of Eisenhower era interest rates. And whenever an owner-occupant can own a building and have the resulting debt service or mortgage payment be comparable to what he can rent the same building, you're going to see a lot of flight toward that particular activity. And so candidly, that's what caused a big amount of the sales price run-up in the last 2 years, is we've had interest rates where an occupant can put 10% down, originate an SBA loan, a small business association loan, and have the resulting debt service financed at somewhere between 4.5% and 5.25%. It's just phenomenal. So that's driven a lot of the sales growth. Now, what's driven the growth in terms of companies locally expanding their business? We've seen a tremendous amount of merger and acquisition activity locally. And it seems like every company you talk to these days either is the target of an acquisition or has a competitor in mind that they would like to acquire or are contemplating some sort of a merger. And anytime you have M&A activity, a real estate requirement results. Obviously, when a company merges with another company, there's excess. When a company acquires, then there's additional business that they're acquiring, and so consequently they're out of space. And when a company divests, which we're not seeing a great deal of, but when a company divests, then we're seeing real estate sometimes becoming a part of that. So the M&A activity has really, really driven a lot of the growth. And quite candidly, we had a real thinning of the ranks of industrial companies back in the Depression. And I call it a depression because it truly was. A lot of thinning of the ranks. So the companies that survived that downturn are healthy, and they have consumed the business of their competition. And right now, their businesses are growing. So we're just seeing a lot of organic growth from really across the board. Historically, our county has been fueled by aerospace and by construction, and we're not seeing as much in terms of aerospace growth and construction growth as we did in other upticks. It's really across the board. It's plastics. It's medical device companies. I just talked yesterday to a company that does heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, and their business is off the charts. So a real broad-based recovery in terms of companies and business.
That's great that you got a broad base like that. I know up here in Oregon, the kind of prior to when I came here, but you always hear the stories about the timber industry and how that kind of fell on hard times. And if you're so dependent on a particular industry and it leaves, it's kind of hard to fill the void there. And it's good to hear that you've got a diverse economy down there.
Yes, and to your point, I lived in the Pacific Northwest in Bellevue, Washington in the early 80s and saw that loud and clear. This was before the days of Microsoft, and so you had Boeing up there obviously, and you had the timber industry, which fueled paper and packaging and construction of homes, and we saw a real downtick in both of those industries, and I was amazed at how quickly housing values declined. We had actually bought a house, and I guess shows how smart I am. We had bought a house, and then my company moved us in a year, and our house had devalued, close to 20% in that year, which isn't the way it's supposed to go.
And it's a long term, right? Real estate's long term.
Yeah, right. Real estate's a long-term hold. We timed that one correctly.
Right. So let me ask you. You mentioned a lot of the merger and acquisition, and that is kind of a lot of the growth, and then also the owner-occupant marketplace. Being a coastal kind of almost, are you considered a port community? I mean, obviously LA is a big port. Do you get a lot of that?
We don't. We're not a port community. Our closest port would be the Port of Los Angeles.
Gotcha. I'm just curious. Something that I saw in the news the other day was just about how they're talking about oil prices, oil per barrel. I think it was Goldman Sachs had at least a headline suggested that they're possibly seeing, or they're predicting $30 a barrel. And I know that back when all the chaos was going on, it was trading for north of $100 a barrel. Which consequently, shot all the demand for all the oil field production and that. But I also know that what we saw, or what I heard a pretty loud conversation, was that companies that had historically been importing product were considering the option to bringing it onshore as opposed to continuing based on just more than anything the fuel costs. Have you seen anything like that in your marketplace? Anybody bringing it in onshore?
We have. I actually have a client. It's pretty good example of what you just described. So this client is in the gift business. So if you are out on a road trip and you pull into a gasoline station and you're visiting the Grand Canyon and you walk into the gift shop and they have these wire racks full of trinkets like license plates with your name on them and coffee mugs with the Grand Canyon emblazoned across the side. Well, this particular company used to simply do the license plates, and they would outsource everything else. They would outsource the wire racking. They would outsource any of the plastic injection molded components. All of that was outsourced, and they would buy a tremendous amount of this inventory from China, and they would bring it, maybe do a little bit of an add-on, and then distribute it. So this particular company has decided that because of the quality control issues with offshoring that particular activity, he's decided to bring it onshore, and has actually invested in plastic injection molding equipment to manufacture his own molds, number one, and his own little trinkets, number two. And it was interesting because this gentleman's about my age. I'm in my late 50s. And I introduced him to another injection molding company client of mine who happens to be in mid-70s, and this gentleman in his mid-70s just said, "Oh, there's no way to make any money making your own molds and doing plastic injection molding in the United States domestically. You just flat can't do it." And my current client that's bringing his manufacturing onshore says, "Well, my numbers would indicate the opposite." And so he's really a contrarian in the face of what is closely held as this is the way you do business in the plastic injection molding world. So we're seeing that happen quite a bit. When you outsource things and you purchase items from either Mexico or China or some other offshore source, your quality control really suffers in many cases. The other thing that suffers is they may become your competitor and you don't even realize it, because what they'll do is they'll make 100,000 of your item and then they'll make 10,000 for their own and charge you for 110,000 pieces, and you think you're getting a great deal, and they're taking the other 10,000 pieces and using those to compete with the 100,000 pieces that you bought. So the competition, the quality control, and like you just mentioned, it's becoming now cheaper to do things domestically than it once was to do things domestically.
Yeah, no, I think the interesting the dynamics of that whole fuel cost thing is one that's, as a consumer, I'm always conscious of it when I go to fuel my vehicle, and always happy when it costs me less. But just how it can really whipsaw the whole dynamics of the employment market, the real estate market. I think I was reading something about how Houston has had a boom here recently with all the growth in energy production and office space, and just how that, if the price does plummet, how that's going to affect the marketplace. And like I said, as a consumer, I'm always happy to be able to pay less. But if it all of a sudden causes a whole lot of unemployment, and you have the reverse in your marketplace just based on nobody having jobs or spaces to be leased, it does change it in a hurry.
It's a huge dynamic changer. We tend to focus as consumers, like you mentioned, on the price of gasoline, and we've got an extra. The price of gasoline in Southern California a couple of years ago was north of $4.50 a gallon, and now I just filled up this morning. It was $2.65 a gallon. So that's a huge savings. $2 a gallon, and if you're putting 20 gallons, do the math. That's a lot of extra coin in your pocket that you can then take and go buy clothes or food or whatever else you go and buy with that savings. But the ripple effect that cheap oil prices per barrel have on our economy are just staggering. If you look today, the headline was Caterpillar yesterday's stock fell because they didn't meet their earnings, and it revolved around a couple of areas. It revolved around the new housing that was being constructed in the boom areas, the Houstons and the Dakotas, and how that has just fallen off the map. And in the other area was China, where their manufacturing is slowing. And last but not least was copper mining, because the price of copper is so low. So is all that attributed to lower prices per barrel on oil? And the answer is absolutely. And then I tend to look at even a deeper level. Let's look at the banking industry and how much of the banking industry is invested in energy companies. And then how many, look at the junk bond market that finances many of these energy startups, and the derivatives market. And then you start to get to this whole domino effect that everyone believes, cheaper fuel prices at the pump are great. They are great for the consumer, but for the overall economy, could actually be devastating if the level of the price per gallon of oil continues at its present level.
Yeah, no, I think the whole oil conversation is an interesting one, and we could probably spend a couple of days talking about it and still be scratching our heads. Let me move to another topic here, if you will. Political stuff. We just recently had an election, and in November, I know up here in Oregon, the recreational marijuana got passed, and one of the curious things we're seeing up here is the demand for warehouse space for growers. And I'm just curious. I don't recall. Did California vote in recreational marijuana, or is that? And if so, I'm curious if you've seen anything like that. Is that affecting your marketplace down there?
We do not have legal recreational marijuana in Southern California. We have legal medicinal marijuana and have for several years.
Okay. Well, that's I think that's something. At least I know here it's something that's making some interesting competition for the warehouse space. Let me ask you about other political or laws or ordinances that warehouses are facing for space lease. Anything like that going on down there?
Yes. It seems like every time we turn around, we've got a new regulation to contend with. Our two most recent regulation changes are both, we just talked about oil prices, are both energy related. One of them is a Title 24 change, and I don't know, candidly, if you have Title 24 issues in the state of Oregon or not, or if that's just simply a California law. But the Title 24 is energy consumption of buildings, specifically air conditioning, lighting. And so anytime a change is made in the office configuration of an office building, of an industrial building, for that matter, of a retail store, there are new Title 24 regs that have to be dealt with. So where it used to be a simple matter to add a couple of offices, it's now this whole energy calculation that you have to hire a specialist to navigate those waters with you when you go to the city for your permits. The other thing is also energy related, and it's called AB 1103. That is an energy benchmarking law that came into effect, and they phased it in over a period of years and phased it in over depending on the size range of the building that you are trying to lease or buy. And it requires a seller or a landlord of real property to benchmark the energy consumption of the building for the past year. Sounds simple enough, sounds like a great plan. Where the devil in the details occurs is that if I own an industrial building and I lease it to you, you in fact, as the tenant of the building, go and apply for your power feed and you get all the power bills. And unless I am smart about requiring you to give me a copy of your power bills, I can't go to Southern California Edison or to Anaheim Power and get that record because they won't give it to me because I'm not their customer. So it creates a whole issue of I want to comply, I want to provide the past energy use of the building, but I don't have access to the bills. So it's become quite challenging, and the real goofy thing is that the heaviest power consumers in any genre of real estate, commercial, retail, office, industrial, are the industrial buildings, the manufacturing buildings. Yet manufacturing buildings don't really apply for AB 1103. They gear it toward retail boxes and office space. So we're all sort of scratching our heads wondering how to deal with AB 1103.
Really? So it does not apply to the industrial and warehouse properties?
It does, but not manufacturing buildings.
Interesting.
I know. It makes no sense.
Well, so does that has it created any kind of a difficulty have any sales failed, or is it that you're aware of, or is it more of just another hurdle that's been put in place that you have to navigate?
It's really the latter. Frankly, as practitioners, we have a fiduciary responsibility to make an owner of real property aware of this as a disclosure to a potential buyer, to a potential occupant, to a potential, frankly, if someone undergoes a refinance, they're supposed to report energy usage so it can be benchmarked. But I would say that it has not been widely adopted in the commercial real estate trade. It should be, but if you went and asked 10 owners, the big owners, of course, would understand it, but your typical 10,000, 20,000 square foot owner of industrial space is not going to recognize what the heck you're talking about. So it strikes me as what happened recently with our other disclosure, which was a natural hazards disclosure. In other words, I have to report if a building's on a fault line, if it's in a floodplain or something of that nature. And that was a slow adoption process as well.
Right. Is there any assistance funding any of these upgrades, or is there any, I'm familiar, I've got a client that does a little bit of this and the energy upgrade stuff, and I know they've been successful in helping, primarily I guess it's more government agencies with this, but I know in certain classes of business there's been some sort of special set-aside funds that, whether it be low interest or whatever, if somebody had to do an upgrade, or is that just considered part of the purchase, or how, is there any assistance in that, or that's just part of the purchase?
Yeah, really not any assistance there. We have some tax benefits in the event that you go through and upgrade your lighting in a manufacturing building or a warehouse. And Edison, if you're an Edison customer, Edison will give you some tax rebates, but you still have to front those dollars. I have heard rumor that some of the lighting companies will provide financing, low interest rate financing. But, if I'm an occupant of an industrial building, I probably go to my bank or use my own cash flow to fund that if I believe that it can save me energy over time and I can take advantage of the of the benefits.
Got it. Well, I'm looking on our clock here, and we're just about out of time. I'm trying to think, was there anything that we touched on that you'd like to expand on anymore, or something? Any thoughts to close here?
Well, I guess just in closing, I would just like to thank you again. I believe what you're doing as a way to add value to your customers is phenomenal. It's very out-of-the-box thinking, and I wish, frankly, that more folks would do things like this, because this is the way we learn. We learn about each other's industries, and it just helps all of us be smarter in the ways in which we service our clients.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, and I couldn't be more of a believer in what you just said there. I mean, I think you get the conversation going and get people talking and get some ideas out there. So before we let you go here, what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you if they'd like to get in touch with you on what you're doing there?
Sure. Let me give you 4 ways. How's that? Twitter handle at Allen, ALLENC Buchanan, BUCHANAN, at Allen C. Buchanan. I'd love to have you follow me on Twitter, and I'd love to follow you back. I have a very robust website, which is allencbuchanan.com. There you'll find lots of ramblings of content that I've created. A. Buchanan at Lee-Associates.com is where you can reach me by email. And then 714-564-7104 is my direct office number. And I would love to connect with you if I can ever give any of your customers some assistance down this way. I'm more than happy to do so. And, connect with me one of those 4 ways, and let's continue the dialogue.
Absolutely. Alan, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this today, and I hope we can do it again soon. And anyway, with that, all right, great. With that, I've enjoyed it, and like I said, look forward to doing it again. For our listeners, please like us, share, and comment on today's show. You can find us by searching Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. Again, we're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.